Good morning and welcome to the 45th Eric Hilton Distinguished Chair Alumni Lecture Series. My name is Charmaine Taylor, and I am the chair of Eric Hilton Distinguished Alumni Club, and it is a privilege to be here today to welcome you and to serve the University of Houston Conrad N. Hilton College of Global Hospitality Leadership. Before I begin the program, I would like to take a moment first, and I'll call it a point of personal privilege, to ask Dr. Clinton Rapole, who is the founder of Eric's Club, to stand and be acknowledged. Thank you for being an encourager. He was my advisor when I was a student here, when I graduated in 1986, and what a privilege it is to have you sitting in the audience today as I introduce my first lecture series. Thank you so much. I'd also like to take one other additional point of privilege and ask Dr. John Bowen, who is our first university honorary member and also who I served as his teaching assistant when I was a student here. And would all of my fellow members of Eric Hilton Distinguished Alumni Club please stand? Thank you for coming from all over the country, all over the world to be here for this special occasion. And unlike any other time, today I'm a person of very few words. My only role is to welcome you and to get this program started. And I'm going to turn it over to the gentleman who serves as the immediate past chair of Eric's Club, Charles Dorn, who will introduce our newest honorary member. Charles?
Good morning. Charmaine, being Charmaine, gave me 1 minute, so I will hopefully keep this very quick. In the early days of the college, Eric Hilton played a particularly important role. You all know him through Eric's Club, you know him through Eric's Restaurant, but for those of you that were not here in the early days, I will tell you that Eric Hilton was the direct relationship between the Hilton family, the Hilton Foundation, to this college. He was here all the time. He had a personal relationship with Dr. James C. Taylor, our first dean, who I swear his eyes are looking at me right now when I look in the back wall. And if you had known him, you would probably agree with that. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So when this conversation started a while ago about Linda and Linda being involved, I had the opportunity to spend a little time reading about Linda and learning about Linda. And I've come to the realization that Linda Hilton, Eric Hilton, and Conrad Hilton shared a number of similar values. They have the value of faith. They have the value of giving back, the value of philanthropy. Linda has served in the hospitality industry her entire career, some more than 38 plus years at Hilton alone, winning numerous awards for Hilton through the years. She now serves Hilton in a totally different capacity as a Hilton ambassador. And one of the reasons she's in Houston today is because she is hosting a group of senior level retired Hilton executives at Hilton of the Americas. And a real thrill to be able to do that. But in Linda's other capacity, she is chairman of the Hilton Foundation. I will not talk about the fact that a few weeks ago, she had a private meeting with the Pope. If those of you who are curious about it, you can see it on LinkedIn. I think I was as thrilled as she was. When I had the opportunity to call Linda and invite her to become an honorary member, I think Linda was genuinely stunned. Linda's relationship with this college has been strong, is getting stronger by the day. And I think without further ado, I would like to ask Linda to come up so I can present her with this honor of being our newest honorary member of the Eric Hilton Distinguished Alumni Club. Thank you, Russ.
You just told me to be careful about that bag, and I tripped on it anyway. Well, good morning, everyone. Today, my heart is filled with gratitude and humility as I accept this incredible honor of being inducted into the Eric Hilton Club and Hall of Honor. To be recognized in my father's name is not just a personal achievement, it is a profound moment that really does resonate deeply within me. Growing up as Eric Hilton's daughter, I can say wasn't the easiest thing that I was given to do, but I was fortunate enough to witness firsthand the remarkable values that he embodied: integrity, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to service. He taught me that true success lies not in accolades or recognition, but the positive impact that we can make in the lives of others. He dedicated his life to uplifting those around him, and it's these principles that inspire me to continue his legacy as I carve my own path as a servant leader. To the board, and to Dean Reynolds and all that were involved in this recognition, thank you for the incredible honor. I'm deeply grateful for your belief that I am worthy to be amongst the distinguished leaders that precede me. And lastly, I'm grateful to my mentors who either drove here today or flew in to support me: Yvonne Levine, Molly McKenzie Schwartz, Katie Ford, Mary Genevieve Cadow, Bob Moore, Brian Stevens, Dieter Huckenstein, Stan Jacobs, Denise Lodridge Cover, Jacques Court, Diana Vaughn, and Al Hermanson, who I actually started my hospitality career with in a very strange way. Your encouragement has been my guiding light, and it is your support, because of it, that I can embody my father's legacy every day. So thank all of you for being here today, and thank you all for this incredible honor. Thank you.
We are so delighted to have you, Linda. And we know that you will add so much value to our club and you will enjoy being a part of our family. So welcome. And thank you all from the Hilton family who came and to be with her today. How special is that to have your family, your extended family, to love you enough and to care about you, to be here with you today and to join us. So thank you so much. And now I'll introduce the gentleman that we all look up to here at the Hilton College, who has been leading us on this path for now almost a decade, Dean Dennis Reynolds.
So good morning, everybody. Feeling good? It's a great day. So I just want to say first, thank you to Linda Hilton. And what's so telling about Linda is when we talked about today, and we talked yesterday actually about her speech, she said, I just hope I don't break down. To be that passionate about something and about our college is pretty incredible. And to have the legacy that the Hilton family has and that we all share, it's just, it's amazing. We're very, very blessed. For the students in here, here are the people you are going to become, which is pretty telling. And it may seem far, far, far away, not because they're old, because they're experienced. Just want to make that differentiation. That's very important. I have the privilege of talking to a lot of people in a lot of parts of the world. And I was in Las Vegas last week, and there is another hospitality program in Las Vegas, some of you may know. And it was interesting because I was at the Waldorf and the GM asked to talk to me. And I thought, what's he want? You have a hospitality program in your backyard. He wanted to hear about our students. That's kind of telling that someone in another city wants to hear about you. which is pretty important. So I think you should be honored about that. And know the reputation that we have, and that reputation is based on you. You are our future, and you are going to be the future that you see today. But you are going to kind of pave what the future looks like for hospitality. Hospitality is a little bit different than it used to be. What do you think? You could see some of the students. Yeah, of course it is. It's better. It's better than it's ever been, and you are part of that. And Rusty Wallace is kind of an anchor for that. And I think his words today will be telling. And being very modest, he's like, no, not at all. But it is, the Eric's lecture series is huge for us. It's something that you don't find anywhere else. And it's kind of telling about what our future is going to look like for today and for many, many, many decades to come. So with that, I want to thank all of you. Thank Eric's Club for everything you do. And of course, go Cougs!
Well, it's almost time now for the moment we've been waiting for, that we plan a couple of years in advance for, to have our guest speaker. And as is our tradition, the last distinguished lecturer from the previous spring, from the previous fall session, will be introducing our speaker. And you students all know her, and many of us as alumni do too, Dr. Agnes DeFranco.
Good morning. How's everyone? Good, good. Well, it is really my honor this morning to introduce you to our featured speaker, Mr. John Rusty Wallace. Mr. Wallace's career began as a dishwasher while attending high school in Klein High School. How many of you are from the Houston area? Yes, so you know where Klein High School is. In 1979, he gained his first hotel experience working as a security guard for the former Shamrock Hilton Hotel. And he continued in this position while he attends the college here. After earning his Bachelor's of Science degree in 1982, he worked in all aspects of the rooms division and was promoted in positions to many cities such as Miami, Florida, Washington, D.C., New York City, and of course, Houston, Texas. In less than 10 years, he became the general manager of the Guest Quarters Hotel in Austin, Texas. And he was promoted to area managing director and general manager of the DoubleTree Hotel Lincoln Center in 1988. And 2 years later, Rusty opened the DoubleTree Hotel at Legacy Town Center in Plano, Texas. And then in 2002, he joined the Omni Hotels and Resorts. Now, Omni quickly realizes Rusty's amazing talent and leadership, and they appointed him as the general manager of the Omni La Mansión del Rio and Macara Hotel and Spa in 2006. He was also the general manager of Omni Mandalay Hotel at Las Colinas in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where he led his hotel to receive the recognition of the Condé Nast Travelers Gold List and also the Reader's Choice List. And he now serves as the area managing director for 7 Omni hotels. Now, as if that's not enough, this is what he does in his spare time. So he has served as the board chair of the San Antonio Hotel and Lodging Association, the San Antonio Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Visit San Antonio. And he was on the mayor's task force to transform the San Antonio CVB to become Visit San Antonio. And currently, Mr. Wallace is also a board member of the Texas Hotel and Lodging Association and serves on the executive leadership team of the American Heart Association in San Antonio. And additionally, in 2008, he was also recognized with the Dean's Distinguished Leadership Series Award from our college. But this is the most important part. Mr. Wallace's wife of 39 years, Estalia, is with us today here. Estalia. And guess what she is? She is the retired elementary school principal. That's amazing. So we love any educator. So thank you, Estalia, for that. And their oldest son, Andrew, and his wife, Sierra, they live in Portland, Oregon. And Andrew is the chief legal counsel for Green Key Solar. And their other son, JT, John Thomas, he lives in Houston, where he works for Ethos Energy as a commercial specialist in their steam turbine business. And Rusty, it is always great to have you come back on campus. So ladies and gentlemen, if you can please help me give a warm welcome to Mr. Rusty Wallace.
Thank you very much. Good morning. So the fact that that apostrophe 82 even happened is a minor miracle. But it's even more intimidating to be sitting with Dr. Rapole and Dr. Bowen in the class because I don't know how you guys let me get out of here. But thank you all for coming today. I'm going to hopefully tell you a story about being a hotelier because I believe that it's an honorable way to make a living in a fantastic career. You can touch a lot of people, and my hope is that one or two of you in this room will want to become the general manager of a hotel at some point because I truly believe it's the greatest job you'll ever have in your life. You have no idea how wonderful it's been for me and my family. So who am I? I'm a native Houstonian. As you heard, I was born in Pasadena, Texas, just about 6 miles off to the east here. Grew up close to the Astrodome. And then moved out to Klein on the north side in the 1970s, when 1960 was 2 lanes and a Dairy Queen. I'm part of the class of 1982, came into school in 1978. And that's what the ID pictures looked like back then. Can you imagine that that person became a general manager? Again, they let me out of here. 49 years in hospitality, if you count the time as a dishwasher. Which really is where I've kind of started to grow the love of the industry that I have. 46 years in hotels. That's my current hotel. So that scraggly guy became that other scraggly guy. I am a husband to the best part of my life, my wife Estelia. She's put up with me and allowed us to move around and have this career and raised our children, and nothing that in my life I've accomplished could have happened without her. So our 2 sons right there, Andrew and JT, that's on our ski trip to Telluride this past February. We're blessed to have them in our lives. And we do have a 3rd son. He's actually an animal. His name is Bo. And when your kids grow up and go off to college and leave home, my wife, I said, we don't have to have another dog now. We can travel. We can go see the world. It lasted 5 weeks. And then Bo came into our lives, and now he runs our house. Current role, I work for Omni Hotels and Resorts. I'm the area managing director for mostly Texas in what's known as our core division. Omni has resorts, we have convention center hotels, and we have core hotels. So I oversee the Omni Bayfront in Corpus Christi, which was actually one of the first Omnis that we had. Omni Frisco at the Star, which we are 50-50 partners with Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys on. Omni Las Colinas, which is the hotel I was general manager of when I joined the company in Dallas. Omni Houston Riverway, the former Four Seasons Hotel on Woodway, which I stayed at last night. And the Omni Austin Downtown Hotel, which is on Trinity and 7th. And then in my spare time, I'm the actual general manager of Omni La Mansión del Rio on the Riverwalk and the Mocara Hotel and Spa. Mocara, interesting, is a 99 little room, little boutique hotel. It's the only Mocara in the world. It is the only Forbes 4-star rated hotel and Forbes 4-star rated spa in the city of San Antonio, and has been for 22 years. And I'll tell you a little more about that later. So we talked a little bit about high school. Like most kids, I wanted a car. And my dad said, well, if you want a car, you're gonna have to pay for it. So I got a job as a dishwasher at the Mariner Steakhouse and started washing dishes. Eventually worked my way up to busser. It was a big promotion, then food runner. I moved over to an oyster bar called Sugars, not that Sugars. This was an oyster bar where I actually learned how to shuck oysters and would carry kegs to the tap beer area. And then my last year in high school, I was a assistant manager of a friend's barbecue joint out off of Bammel, North Houston Road, if anybody knows where that is. And we had a beer garden, we did barbecue, and we would play music. I think if you've watched, has anybody ever watched the show The Bear? So there's a thing about a restaurant, and I think The Bear kind of captures it. And amidst all the chaos and the tension and the just trying to get through the shift, there's a family dynamic that happens in that environment. And I was immediately drawn to it when I started working there. And I also enjoyed, and still to this day enjoy, delivering memorable experiences, because really that's what we do. We don't sell rooms, we don't sell steaks, we don't sell massages. We sell memories. You know, whether it's a honeymoon or the night before your family goes off to serve our country, we deliver that experience for people. And hopefully we never forget that that is the critical part of what we do in the hospitality business. You'll hear me talk a little bit about the Shamrock, because the Shamrock was a huge part of my life. The gentleman whose picture's back there, Dean Taylor, as I recall, and it could have been Dr. Rapol, I think it was Dean Taylor. I came into school thinking I'm going to be the next Tillman Fertitta. I'm going to be the next big restaurateur, because that's all I knew. And Dean Taylor told me, you know, you should probably rethink that. And while you're in school, you should get some experience in the hotel business, so that when you graduate, you're going to be more marketable. You're going to be able to interview for hotel jobs. You're going to be able to interview for F&B jobs. And me not knowing any better or understanding, I contacted a gentleman named Ron Hughes, who was the general manager of the Shamrock Hilton. And unbelievably, Mr. Hughes agreed to meet with me. And I told him that I wanted to learn the hotel business, and I was incredibly fortunate that he put me in kind of a training program. He hired me as a security guard, which I did for about 6 months. And then 6 months I rotated through to reservations, then front desk, then chief clerk. All this time learning the business. When you're a security guard, you think you don't learn the business. But if you walk the hotel and you walk it with the engineers and you learn about how do the elevator systems work, how do the HVAC systems work, I was always curious about all the parts of the hotel. The Shamrock, unlike today's hotel, we had a butcher shop where they broke down entire sides of beef. They would bring them into the hotel. That doesn't happen anymore. We had a pastry shop that made the most incredible cakes and confectioneries you've ever seen. It was a small city. It was an incredible hotel. While there, being a security guard, we had to deal with the telephone department quite a bit, because that's the communications hub for the hotel. Luckily for me, there was this really pretty telephone operator. And at first she wouldn't give me the time of day, but at some point she thought maybe I had something. And as Agnes said, we've been married now for 39 years. Towards the end, I moved over to the overnight shift. In my last year, I would work three days on the 3 to 11 shift, 2 days on the 11 to 7 shift, and began taking over as the night manager. I graduated in December of '82, and so in April of '83, I was the assistant executive housekeeper. I took a couple of days of vacation and went to Albuquerque, New Mexico to watch Phi Slamma Jamma play in the Final Four. And we lost. And I live in San Antonio. And I just relived that experience 3 days ago. But I'm super proud of our team and the fact that our culture won over talent. And I think that's the amazing thing about Kelvin Sampson and the program. And I hope those of you that are in school here really appreciate what something special is that you're seeing. Then I became assistant director of housekeeping at that hotel upon graduation, because I'd kind of already finished training. That picture is, I don't know if it's the exact picture, but who's taken hospitality law? Can you imagine having a 10-meter diving board at your hotel swimming pool? What lawyer would allow you to do that today? I remember in '79, we hosted the American Hotel Lodging Association National Convention at the Shamrock. And they dropped a boat in the pool and they pulled skiers behind it while we had a party on the lanai of a Polynesian themed dinner. It was amazing. I was fortunate enough to get promoted out of the hotel in '83, or '84, which will be the next one. But '83 was kind of a pivotal year for us. We had Hurricane Alicia, and that shut the hotel down. We did not have an emergency generator that was capable of running elevators or continuing to keep the refrigeration systems running. And it was a difficult time. All staff was in the hotel, including my wife. We were there for 3 days. We were running food up to rooms as quickly as we could because it was going to go bad if we didn't get it out of the coolers. And we took care of a full house of people for 3 days until the power came back on. They flocked to that hotel. I think somewhere around here there's some history on the hotel, and I'm looking forward to going to look at it afterwards. But it's not there anymore. It was demolished in 1987, and that's a little sad. To this day, I carry a key fob or a key tag on my hotel keys, and it has Shamrock Hilton on it. When you turn it over, it has the address because you could drop it in the mail and they would send it back. And the phone number says MO6, because that's how we used to call phone numbers back then, Mohawk. So I have a lot of memories of that hotel. The other thing I would tell you, at the front desk, we did not have computers. So everything was paper. So we had a reg card, we had a rack slip, we had the telephone operator slip, everything was in triplicate. When you checked in, we couldn't look at the screen and go looking for your room in the computer. We looked you in the eye and we talked to you. And it was, I think, the essence of hospitality. We would tear the piece of paper apart. We'd put it in a tube like you'd see at a bank on a drive-through. And it would go up to the PBX room where my wife would take it out of the tube and put it on a spindle where all the phone records for the hotel were kept. And it's hard for me to believe we've gone from that to I get my overnight reports on this phone now. But it's interesting, and I think I learned more at the Shamrock Hilton and the University of Houston in those 4 years than I've probably learned in the 40-something years since then. So I credit that to Hilton Hotels Corporation, the Shamrock, and the people I was fortunate enough to work with there. Did I turn it off? Okay. In 1983, towards the end of the year, I was able to go on a task force assignment, which was a great opportunity to help open the Miami Airport Hilton for a general manager named Kevin Deverich in Miami at the International Airport. I was there for about, I think it was 3 weeks. And we were doing the whole setting up for operations. We were hiring all the employees. We were cleaning the rooms. We were loading them up with alarm clocks. And back in those days, for some reason, we would glue the remote control for the TV down to a swivel, which was crazy. But we got the hotel open, and I was there for 2 years. Mr. Deverich left and went off to the Capitol Hilton. Leo Salome came in and became the general manager. Fortunate for me, Leo had been the assistant general manager at the Shamrock before I left. And we had a great 2 years there. I oversaw housekeeping, laundry, and pool operations. I had a very diverse group of associates. I had Haitian immigrants who had come over. I had Cuban immigrants who had come over in the Mariel boat lift. And I learned quickly that being director of housekeeping had a lot of human resources in the job title because we had to take care of our associates because they had difficult lives to live. And I think we did okay because when we decided to get married, my wife and I, the housekeeping department threw us a wedding shower, and those people were family for us. The other interesting part of my time there was the New York hotel strike of 1985. I think I've got the right date. I was at the Waldorf Astoria, which if I didn't mention, I'm a hotel geek. I love hotels. To get to go to the Waldorf Astoria, just to get to go there is amazing. To get to go there and work was even more incredible. But I worked there during the strike, and I think my biggest memory of that is there's a vacuum cleaner called a billy goat that you use to clean sidewalks and parking lots. And I would push the billy goat down the street as the picketers would throw things on the ground in front of me and behind me. Helped out in housekeeping, helped out in banquets. We kept the hotel operating the entire 27 days. We never shut down. And we took great care of our customers. And it was a life-changing experience for me. It was my first introduction to the union environment, which I came across later. In 1986, Mr. Deverich was going through the finalization of a walls to stud renovation of the Capitol Hilton in Washington, D.C. It was a Statler Hilton originally, and I think it was 900 rooms or thereabouts. And Hilton had decided to go ahead and take the walls out, strip the whole thing down, and turn it into a 544-room hotel, which it still is today. 2 blocks north of the White House, in an incredible location that probably can never be replicated. I was the director of housekeeping, had to deal with Hotel Trade Council Local 9, had some very interesting run-ins as I learned that when you're working with a union and you're the manager of the department, you can't go and start helping to vacuum a carpet, or you can't help to move bags, or you can't help really to do anything because that's a union job and you're not allowed to do that. So it made an interesting experience for me. Two of my biggest memories were that Mr. Deverich allowed us to attend a couple of very large VIP events that they, I believe, still have at the hotel to this day, the Alfalfa Dinner and the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And I was able to meet the president of the kid from Pasadena, Texas. I was able to meet the president of the United States and shake his hand on his way into the dinner, and be in the ballroom when columnists were cracking jokes about the administration. And again, life-changing for somebody who never thought they'd see that. Additionally, I got rooms director training as director of housekeeping. I worked for a lovely woman named Valerie Dvorak. She was a teacher. I hope that I've become that. As director of housekeeping, she taught me how to manage the checkbooks, the payroll systems, all of the planning and budgeting and forecasting for the rooms division to help me to prepare for my next position. And then the last thing Hilton did for me, which was incredible, was they sent me to Hyde Park, New York, to the Culinary Institute of America for 2 weeks of training for non-food and beverage leaders. And to be able to get up at 5:30 in the morning and start sauteing foie gras, sounds crazy, but it was amazing. It was an incredible experience, and truly enjoyed it. And really it helped prepare me to be able to move into the next phase of my career. In 1988, I was promoted by Arthur Surin, who was the vice president, and John Power was the general manager, to be the executive assistant manager of the New York Hilton and Towers. I believe at the time it was the largest hotel in New York City and probably the 5th largest hotel in the country. It was crazy. We had, Robert, how many desk stations did we have? 12 desk stations. And people coming in and out. There were 800 arrivals and 1,200 departures, and it was an unbelievable experience to be in New York. And it's true, New York never sleeps. Years at that hotel, I learned a tremendous amount about the importance of having integrity, of running a business the right way, and basically coordinating 1,400 people. Who I think that was what the rooms division side of the house was, to get these people in, make sure their rooms were clean, make sure we got them out, and we took great care of them. Again, another union house, so that was an interesting piece. And then my first experience with what people today call work-life balance. Our son Andrew was born in August of 1989. And my wife and I sat down and looked at each other, and we decided that we didn't think we could raise our son in New York City. We were living in Jersey and commuting in, and the hours were crazy. So we made the very difficult decision to leave Hilton. And we left Hilton in September of 1989 and moved home to Houston. And when I moved home here, I got to a hotel in the Galleria that's still there. It's a DoubleTree Guest Suites Galleria. Back then it was the guest quarters. 335 suites, smaller hotel, smaller staff, a brand new company that only had 13 hotels when they hired me. And just the difference in culture from going from a major company like Hilton with giant hotels. I learned at that point I didn't want to be in the giant hotel. I like being in a hotel where I can look at my associates and I know their names. Hopefully, if I can, I know about their families. And that's a part of the job that gives me great joy and why I'm a hotelier. Mike Hirsch was the general manager. After coming from New York, he had to kind of decompress me a little bit. It was like, no, this is Houston. You really can't manage here like you did in New York. And I still have a plaque that my team gave me. It had a whip on it, a bull whip, and it said "to the whip," because I was a little high strung when I got back. But over time, I was able to get back to a level state. and was able to then, in 13 months, I think we made 11 house payments, was promoted to my first general manager's job at the guest quarters Austin Hotel, which is now the DoubleTree Austin Guest Suites. It's on 15th Street between Lavaca and Guadalupe. It was a really small hotel, 180 rooms, there were only 13 managers in the entire hotel. And it was a busy hotel too. We ran about 84% occupancy, one of the highest rates in the city next to the Four Seasons, who was above us. And we had everybody in Texas come every time there was a UT football game, every time there was UT graduation. Every suburban in the state of Texas would show up at our hotel, and we didn't have much of a garage. I had a great team in that hotel that a lot of them are still close friends of mine. Many of them are still in the hotel business. Some have actually retired. But we were there for a lucky 8 years and really enjoyed Austin. During that time, Beacon Hospitality got bought by DoubleTree Hotels, and the hotel sold a couple of times. So I went through walking owners through, new owners through, walking new management company through. A little stressful for the team, a little stressful for me, but we managed to get through it all. And a gentleman named Joe Palmieri came into my life at that time. And Joe was, at the time, the general manager of the DoubleTree Lincoln Center in Dallas, and he became my boss. So he had the Texas region. And if I ever have strived to be like anybody that I've come across in my career, it would be Joe Palmieri. He was truly a mentor that meant the world to me and my family. When my father passed away, he came. He just was a gentleman, and I've never met a person who had ever a word to say about him other than what a great guy he was. Hope they say that about me one day. I also started getting involved in the industry when I was in Austin. I became the president of the Austin Hotel Lodging Association. I served on the governor's task force of economic development for the tourism industry. That was back then the advertising campaign for Texas to try to draw people in from out of state. And was also got onto the Texas Hotel Lodging Board of Association, or Texas Hotel Lodging Board of Directors. So I started getting involved in industry. In '99, Joe decided he needed more support in the Dallas area. He asked me to come to Dallas, and I took over the DoubleTree Lincoln Center. And I also had 4 other hotels in the city, and I think Joe had 14. I can't remember the number. It was an interesting time. Joe was still officing in the hotel, so I'm the hotel general manager. He's the area vice president. I moved a plant in the lobby. I came back in the next day. The plant was back. I said, "What happened? Why is the plant back?" Well, Joe wanted it back. So I learned pretty quickly that you got to take care of your boss, and he's still your boss no matter what. We moved under Promise Hotels. We went through Y2K. Has anyone ever heard of Y2K? So we all had to, my wife for Y2K was 9 months and maybe a week pregnant with our younger son, JT, but everybody had to move into the hotel because at the stroke of midnight, we knew the entire hotel was going to shut down. All the computers were going to go off. We weren't going to be able to do anything. Didn't happen. But watching everybody plan for that event, seeing it come to fruition and then getting through it was incredible. Hilton Hotels purchased Promise in 2001, which is how DoubleTree and Hampton Inn and all of those brands kind of rolled up under the Hilton umbrella. And I learned a really good lesson at that time. When I left Hilton in 1989, I did it the right way. And it's a good thing I did that, because Ken Smith, who was VP with Hilton, was back in my life. And luckily, I had not done anything to damage the relationship, so I was grateful to be back. Unfortunately, we couldn't have a VP and a city manager in the same hotel at Lincoln Center, so I needed to find another place to go. And then luckily, there was a construction project coming up in Plano, which was an amazing opportunity to be at a 417-room conference center hotel, ground up. And I was the first employee on site. I was in the construction trailer. I got to be involved in hiring every person that worked there, went on every sales call to convince the local community to support the hotel and the corporations in the DFW market. And we successfully opened the hotel in spring of 2001. We were full. Business was good. Business travel was booming. And then 9/11 happened. And I think that's probably the first real serious adversity I faced in my career. So the hotel went from full to empty overnight. And for the first time in my life, I had to make a call to the owner, it's called a cash call, to ask him to fund the account so that we could make payroll. And it was a very painful time because I knew, if you look, that says Marriott on the top of the hotel. Well, I knew right then it wasn't going to be a DoubleTree much longer because this was basically stretching him to the limit. And for a few months, I ended up between the management company, which was Hilton, Joe Palmieri, my boss, and the owner. And it was a painful place to be at a time like that because I felt like I was walking a tightrope with sharks on this side and sharks on that side. And it was a difficult time. Luckily, I had met some people with a company called Omni Hotels. They were pretty small at the time, at different meetings for state association and other networking opportunities. And a gentleman named Todd Scartozzi called me up because they needed a general manager for their hotel in Las Colinas. And I met him for breakfast and I said, you know, I love Hilton. I'm gainfully employed. They're not going to let me go. I'm going to end up somewhere. I really didn't want to be in Minneapolis, but I knew I knew I wouldn't be looking for a job. And I said, why should I come to work for your company? And he said, well, we own our hotels and we operate on one simple philosophy and we call it the trilogy. And the trilogy is that we appreciate and reward our associates, we exceed the expectations of our guests, and we provide superior financial returns to our owners. And we balance those three. Not one is more important than the other two. And now after 23 years with the company, I actually believe that that's what we do. It's not always easy. Stay true to that North Star. It was 7 months after 9/11, so business was recovering slowly. It was about a 7-iron shot from the corporate office. So I constantly had our owner, Mr. Rolling, in the hotel. I had constantly the president and CEO of the company. If there was a new concept or a new system to test, we were the test hotel. So it was a great place to be for visibility and being able to be in Omni Hotels. I also was very fortunate to start working with a corporate team on what eventually became the Omni Hotel at the Fort Worth Convention Center, which is a beautiful hotel in Fort Worth right across the street from the convention center, and was actually planning to become the general manager of that hotel when it opened. Plans don't always work the way you think they will. Because we are a company that doesn't have debt, our owner had seen an opportunity to purchase a hotel in San Antonio, Texas. And so when the owner of La Mansión del Rio, and it was called the Watermark Hotel at the time, came to Mr. Rolling and said, can you help us refinance? He said, I'll do you one better. I'll just buy them from you. How's that? And because we were not a publicly traded company, he did. He literally wrote a check and bought the hotels. And so in March of 2006, I became general manager of these two hotels. If you go back to the Shamrock, you go back to the Capitol Hilton, which was a Statler, and I said I'm a hotel geek, there's no place I could be that would be better than these, especially the one on the right. So when I was probably 10 or 11 years old, I think I was on one of those barges that was going down the river in San Antonio, and they said, and on the left is the world famous scene in Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, La Mansión del Rio Hotel. And I get to work there. So it's been an exciting 17 years now. 19. That's why I didn't want to get up here and speak today. 338 rooms. We have 330 associates. We're down from 429 before COVID. The most difficult day in my career, and I was telling somebody this earlier, it wasn't Y2K and it wasn't Hurricane Alicia and it wasn't 9/11. It was standing in front of 170 associates and telling them we were going to lock the hotel. And that was March 16th of 2020. I'm not a guy that gets emotional very often, but that was an extremely difficult time. And we were closed from March 16th until we reopened for Memorial Day, quasi. And every day during that time, it was all about trying to conserve enough cash to not have to close the company and not have to sell the hotels. And so we were down to 8 employees. We were working with security again. We're all doing whatever we had to do to keep the building from falling apart and hold it together until we could find a way to reopen. The offside or the good side of having to furlough all those people was how wonderful it was when we got to bring them all back. And it's taken time, and clearly we haven't brought them all back yet. We're more efficient in a lot of ways than we were prior to COVID. But it's been my pleasure to be able to bring those hotels back up and running again and to create jobs for people who count on those jobs to feed their family and educate their kids. We have 338 rooms at La Mansión del Rio, 99 at Mocara, Forbes 4-star. 2 Riverwalk facing restaurants, Four Brothers and Ostra. They were full of U of H people the last weekend. Unfortunately, there were a lot of Florida people there too. Again, Mocara is the only Forbes 4-star rated hotel and spa consecutively since 2003. And La Mansión del Rio is one of only 10 hotels in the United States that has held the AAA 4 Diamond Award for 45 consecutive years. Our staff is intensely prideful, and they love the hotel and believe in what they do. Tell you a little about my hotel. So the hotel's life began as a Catholic boys' school in 1852. The building was originally the St. Mary's Academy, about 100 students. And in 1925, it moved on to become St. Mary's College. And from 1934 to 1966, it was St. Mary's College of Law. During that time, a gentleman named Pat Kennedy had gone to school at St. Mary's College of Law. He was a practicing attorney in town. And his son was born in the hospital, which is across the street from us, called the Nix Hospital. And he's looking out the window at the site where the school used to be because the brothers couldn't keep the school there. They had to move it farther out of downtown. It had outgrown the site. And so on the one side, he's looking at the school site. And on the other side, he's looking at the Tower of the Americas being built for the 1968 World's Fair. And he says, I think that'd be a good spot for a hotel right on the river. So from 66 to 68, he reimagines the property and opens it as a 180-room hotel. That same time, Mr. Threlkill over there, who I've known, he graduated in 82 with me. His owner was building another hotel, also with Del Rio in the title, called the Palacio del Rio, the Hilton. I think it was built in 180 days, 200 days. Both hotels opened in spring of 1968 for the World's Fair. And arguably, I'd say they've been 2 of the most successful hotels continuously running since that time. They're both, in a way, known more for their name. La Mansión is known more as La Mansión than it is as Omni. Palacio, maybe not, but maybe. In 1978, the hotel was expanded, and in 2006, we purchased the hotels. Spanish style design and really everything there feels like colonial Spain, and it really ties in the feeling of San Antonio. So arches, Saltillo tile, there's brick walls in every single guest room. There's cedar beams across the ceiling. We have a third of our inventory is on the Riverwalk, which is impossible to replace. I'm not sure if it was in Mr. Hilton's book, but location, location, location. The hotel has an incredible location that can never be replicated. And that's what drew our owner to it. Mocara is right across that little bridge there. And that bridge is known as the Selena Bridge because apparently Selena got engaged on that bridge. It was originally a saddle factory by Lazarus Frank family, employed 500 craftsmen. They produced saddles for Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders, who stationed at Fort Sam Houston when they were getting ready for the Spanish-American War. They made a saddle for Pancho Villa and the King Ranch and all the famous ranchers in South Texas. The hotel opened in 2003 as the Watermark Hotel and Spa. It's got a 17,000 square foot destination spa, which was a new business line for me. I'd not really had much experience with spas. It's been a pleasure to learn them. It's urban sophistication with modern comfort. And in 2010, our owner made a mistake. He didn't buy the Watermark name. We let the former owner keep it. And so we had to rebrand the hotel. Luckily, we've been able to get past that at this point, but if you ever buy a hotel, buy the naming rights. And you can see that we have giant glass windows, rooftop pool, there's the hot tub and the spa, and then it's the same, it's just the other side of the river from La Mansión del Rio. So in my time, I have a few things that I've kind of picked up about being a hotelier. One that's not up there is you spend a lot of time bending down, and when you get home at the end of the day, you usually find the things that you picked up off the floor. And you hope that your associates see you doing it so that they'll follow along. But I remember at Hilton, when a customer wakes up in the morning, the hotel has to be immaculate. And you walk around picking stuff up all the time. It starts with leading with a servant's heart. And I heard that earlier, whether it was at the restaurant or at the Shamrock Hilton or wherever it is. It's an honorable business that we do. We take care of people when they're away from home. And they're vulnerable when they're away from home. We're responsible for their safety, their feeding, their well-being. We're responsible to make sure they get home to their loved ones better than they came. And if we do that right, they'll come back to us the next time they visit our area. So I think that's a key that you have to be on this business. You need to be humble, not humble, not the town. You need to be humble. My humble stories are two, they're real easy. When I was a busser at the Mariner Steakhouse, we had a salad bar. It was a big thing back then. All the restaurants, right? We all had salad bars. And I was the guy who would have to take the crocks of salad dressing out and restock them at the salad bar. And I came out of the kitchen and I'm walking in front of the salad bar, and it's a hardwood floor, and somebody had dropped a pat of butter. And I went down, and Roquefort and Catalina and a little bit of Thousand Islands splattered about 10 tables. And I was ready to crawl under the salad bar. Luckily, my boss was a great guy and didn't rip me apart about it. He understood what had happened. But it kind of taught me a little bit about not taking myself too seriously. And then when I do management orientation for people that work for me, as they become new managers, I try to remind them that it's easy to get a big head and think we're the most important person in the hotel. I mean, I got the office, I got the title, I get to be the big boss, right? Well, if I call in sick tomorrow, most everybody in the hotel probably won't even know, and the operation will not be affected in any way. If the morning breakfast cook calls off sick tomorrow morning, it creates a world of pain for a whole lot of people. So I always tell our folks, don't take yourself too seriously. We are not the most important people in the hotel. It's the people serving the customers that are the ones that really matter. Smile, even when you don't want to. So I think when you are the general manager, the rooms director, the food and beverage director, the executive chef, if you come out of a meeting where you were just going through your Q3 financial projections and they didn't look too good, and you walk around with a frown on your face, if I go across that bridge between the two hotels, every associate in that restaurant is looking at me as I come across the bridge. They're going to take their cue from how I present myself. I smile all the time, even if I don't want to. And later I'll tell you about a book you should read. It's a premise in the book too. You'll feel better, your employees will feel a lot better, and you might live longer. I didn't know if I was going to make it to 65, but I'm still kicking. Dress for the job you want, not the one that you have. And basically do everything for the job you want, not the one that you have. How you are perceived by people is what's going to direct what happens to your career as you move forward. Professionalism will make you stand out. So I think we were talking about this morning. It's not complicated. Be on time. Be on time. Answer your emails in a timely fashion. Complete your assignments at the date they're due or the time they're due. And if you can't, let the person who's expecting it from you know a day or two ahead of time that you need a little extra time. If you do those three things, and then you add one more, which is when you go to a job interview, don't email to thank the person, write a handwritten note and thank them for taking their time from their day to meet with you. You will stand out over every other candidate that's out there looking for a job. I promise you that. And you'll move up faster than anybody else will. It's okay not to know. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. It is a lot better to say to Mr. Rolling, as Bob Cowan and I know, Bob, I'm not sure about that, but let me check on it and I'll get back to you. Because I've seen people come up with an answer off the top of the, just off the cuff, and it didn't go well. Because sometimes the person you're telling it to knows a hell of a lot better than you do what the truth is. So don't be afraid to not know everything and to do your research. Resilience in the face of change. I mean, whether it's Hurricane Alicia, whether it's 9/11, whether it's going from papers going up a vacuum tube to the PBX operator to a front desk kiosk, everything is going to change. My wife told me not to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There's more power in this phone than there was that was used to get people to the moon. And that's a scary thought. I had no idea all the things that were going to change in my life, but they have. And I think you have to be ready to bounce back from those events, whether it's COVID or whatever it is. It's not that you're not going to get knocked down, it's how do you get up? Hopefully our Cougars get up for next season. Integrity is the key. People will know if you cut corners, if you fudge, if you're not telling the truth, people will know. And it never works out. We have a system called Medallia that tracks guest satisfaction. So they get an email after they check out. They're asked to fill out a form. I actually saw a general manager altering people's email addresses that he knew complained because he was so worried that his Medallia scores were not going to show good. And people do things like that. Now, he lost his job because people notice. But if you can't do it right, don't do it. Don't be in the business. I'd rather be number 7 in the star report and have done it the right way than win every time on the star or the Medallia or whatever competitive field it is and have cut corners and done it the wrong way. What's the wrong way? You want to make your budget, right? You want to make your bonus. What if you don't spend money on china glass silver or linen? Let's say you decide that's where you're going to save the money to get your GOP number up to the point where you can bonus. What have you done to the operation for the coming year? You've hamstrung them and set them up for failure. So you got to do the right thing. And I can't say it any easier than that. Listen, I've been doing a lot of talking, but I think the most important thing is to listen. You cannot learn when you're talking. So I'm not learning anything today. But I honestly believe that people want to be heard. And if you can listen to them, they will show appreciation for it and they'll work for you. They'll walk through walls for you if you do it well enough. So always listen to the people that are talking to you, even when you don't want to. Because sometimes the ones that are the most difficult in a housekeeping department, the loudest one might have the best information for you on how to improve your operation. Never stop learning, because you have to learn new computer systems. You have to learn new ways of doing business. And I would say read this book. Because of the books that I've read, this book that was written in 1936 by Dale Carnegie is probably one of the most impactful ones I've read. I've read it probably, it's on the side of my desk. I probably pick it up every once in a while just to remind myself. But this is the people business. This is not aircraft manufacturing or rocket science. We're dealing with people. And it's all about relationships. And I promise you, if you take a breeze through that book, you'll pick up something that will help you, not only in your work relationships, but in your personal relationships. So I get to do a little commercial now on my company, because some of you guys are going to graduate here pretty soon. And guess what I want? I want you to come work for us. So Omni Hotels and Resorts, we're privately owned. We're a brand of luxury hotels. We're based in Dallas, Texas. Our company carries virtually no debt. So right now we're building that 350 room resort in Pantoque, Mexico. That's beautiful. That'll be our first hotel in Mexico. And we're doing it from operations. We don't take out loans. We build them from operations. The hotel I run in San Antonio, both of them, no mortgage. That makes life a lot easier. Hotels under development include Raleigh. If that's the picture of the Raleigh Hotel right there, 550 rooms at the convention center. Omni Fort Lauderdale is getting close to being completed and will open later this year at a new convention center on the Intercoastal Canal in Fort Lauderdale. And we were just awarded the Omni New Orleans Convention Center Hotel, 1,000 rooms. We have 50 distinct properties. We're little, 22,500 rooms, 20,000 associates. We love resorts and we love golf. We have 25 world-class golf courses, including a new golf course in Frisco, Texas, which will host the PGA Championship and will host 2 Ryder Cups in the coming future. And we are official partner of the PGA. And then 22 award-winning spas in our resorts. We have an internship program. So if you're looking for something to do this summer and you want to find out if the hotel business is for you, we take freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. There is an application and property interview. The length of the program is very flexible, so it's while you're out of school. We provide housing at some of the locations. Every OmniCares intern or OCI receives 3 free Omni stay nights at any hotel when they complete the program. They get a full leadership curriculum, and they get priority consideration for management training program that you would go into after graduation. And after you've completed that, you're ready to become a leader in development. And then our AHLA Certified Leader in Development program, or LID program. We prepare college graduates for promotion to management. You have to have your degree. You apply. You'll become an assistant department head, generally 8 to 10 months, and then you move on and begin your career. Which brings up another point. If you're able to move, it's kind of important. You have to be able to move. And if you're able to move, your career will progress a lot faster than if you say, I can never leave Houston, or I can never leave San Antonio. There's one Omni in San Antonio. If you can't leave town, you got to wait till I die. It might be a long time. And so why Omni? Why should you come work for us? Well, we have city hotels like mine. We have major convention hotels like the Dallas Convention Center Hotel, the Fort Worth Convention Center Hotel, the new Fort Lauderdale Hotel. We're family owned and operated. We're small, but we're not small. I know everyone from Mr. Rolling, the owner, and as Bob knows, he spent some time with us. It still feels like a family company. The people that are in my job in La Costa, California, or Nashville, Tennessee, they feel like brothers and sisters to me, and we truly enjoy each other's company and working for the company. No debt, empowered by the trilogy, and we love U of H. I think that's it. I'm happy to take any questions. Yes, sir.
So what was the biggest change from going from being the GM of one property to overseeing multiple properties? And what lessons did you learn or changes did you make to yourself or your life to make that happen?
I think probably what I like about it the most is when you're GM of a property or 2 properties, you're in the day-to-day. You're at a pre-convention meeting, you're doing room inspections, you're on the driveway helping the guys park cars because they're getting overrun. You're in the operation. I can't do that for the Omni Houston from San Antonio. I can't do that for Corpus Christi. So I have a relationship with the general managers of those hotels, and I think what changes is you're working on developing those people and their skill sets and trying to help them become better at what they're doing at running their business. Because the great thing about a hotel general manager job is you are the CEO of your own little business. You're running it. Because a corporate office, even Hilton, they can only be in so many places, and you're there every day. So I think that's it. It's about mentoring and training and trying to help get the best out of the people that are the general managers. Yes, ma'am.
All of your experience staying, have you ever gone through burnout before? And do you have any advice of how to like combat that? Because it is a very demanding industry.
It is. I think you have to, the answer is no. I haven't ever had burnout. I heard somebody say a while back, work-life balance is a problem if you hate your work. If you love your work, work-life balance isn't such. And the other thing with people who burn out, I've found is most times actually, it's not that the job demanded they put in that many hours. It's they put in that many hours. They do it to themselves. And so for me, I love getting up in the morning and going into the hotel. There is no better part of my day than standing at the housekeeping stand-up meeting and talking to the ladies and seeing us get ready to take care of guests. So no, I haven't had it. But I think you need to be a well-rounded person. You need to have your boundaries as far as your family life, your life outside the hotel. I don't want people that work 80 hours a week. It does me no good. I need people who are rounded. They need to have something outside. So yeah, sometimes I'll look at my director of finance, Lacey, and I'll say, you need to get out of here. You've been here too long today. So I think it's up to us to look out for each other. But no, I haven't had that. Maybe during COVID, a little bit. Yes.
Sorry. What would be your biggest advice to us students who still have a couple more years to go? What would you encourage us to start doing? What would just be your biggest advice to us?
I think the first thing, which I've spoken to other classes here, is if you've never waited a table, if you've never checked somebody in at a front desk, if you've never done anything in the service industry and you find yourself in your third year at the University of Houston in the Hotel and Restaurant College, I would tell you, go try it. Because you can learn it in the classroom, but until you actually do it, you're not going to know if you have that servant's heart or not. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, would be to do that. I guess the other part of it would be have confidence in yourself. You are capable. I joked about graduating in '82 being a miracle. It kind of was. I mean, I worked full time and went to school during the day. It was hard. But I look at college as, it's not to me about where you are, if you're cum laude or you're where you are. It's that you took on a big, hairy, audacious goal of getting a degree from a university. And there was adversity along that route somewhere, because we all faced it. And if you finish and you've accomplished something, and you ought to be proud of yourself for that, and you ought to be confident when you go out into the world that you can achieve anything you want to achieve. Sure. Yes, ma'am.
With Omni, do you think y'all hire more internally or externally? And how do you think that affects being a family-owned company and staying close?
Yeah, the culture of the company is really important to us. And I'd love to say that first of all, on property, we attempt to promote 75% of our management staff from inside. We want to grow our own. But when you're opening hotels in Mexico, New Orleans, Fort Lauderdale, I mean, we're a small company, the pool is not that big. We have to go outside sometimes. So we look for companies. I mean, I would have never come to Omni if I hadn't been outside. I had to come from somewhere. And I was so fortunate to work for Hilton, because to this day, I will tell you, Hilton trained me. They absolutely did. Not Hyatt, not Marriott, not anybody else. But I think we want to promote from within. So once you get in, the sky's your limit. And then getting in from outside can be a little challenging with us. So I interviewed for the I interviewed for Omni on my first interview was December 22nd of 2001, right? It was 9/11/01, yeah. December 22nd. My start date was April 22nd. It took that long for them to decide whether I was worth taking a risk on or not. Luckily for me, they made the right choice. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Dawson. And I just have a very simple question. What are the three most hardest life lessons you've had to learn in your extraneous career path?
Three hardest lessons. Well, you can't control things that you can't control. And so if you focus on those things, you're not setting yourself up for a good time. They're bigger than work. Every day on this planet is a gift. It's what you do with that gift. And if you can and I guess the third thing would be, if you can find a way to have a job where you make other people's lives better, that's a great way to live. Sure.
Hello.
I heard a voice. Oh, over there. Sorry.
Hello. Where you mentioned the book How to Win Friends and Influence People. Which chapter or part do you think is most important to pay attention to?
There's one that I use in my life a lot. And it's the only way to win an argument is to not get in an argument. It sounds crazy, right? But if you get in an argument with somebody, what happens if you win? What happens to them? If you win, they lose. It's going to be hard to move your life and your career and your relationships forward if you leave a trail of people who lost behind you. So it's not that you can always find a win-win and everything's not perfect, but I try to keep that in my head, that it's not about winning an argument. Sometimes it's about preserving a relationship, whether that be a business relationship, a personal relationship, anything in life. That chapter probably more than anything.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wallace. Victor Okoroji, I'm a student here, and I'm just super appreciative to be in the room with you. My question was more so, what are you most proud of in your career? You obviously have a lot of achievements that you've been able to accomplish with Omni, Hilton, different companies. What are you most proud of right now? And then also, what are you looking to leave behind with your legacy at Omni?
So actually, that one's pretty easy. One of the benefits of my job at La Mansión del Rio and Mocara is that I get to have a hotel manager at Mocara. And my hotel manager at Mocara is usually someone who just is a rooms division manager. Maybe they're a food and beverage director. They could even be a director of sales and marketing or director of finance, but they want to become a general manager. That's their goal. And so those people usually, fortunately for me, they end up with me at Mocara for usually a couple of years. And so right now there are 7 general managers. 2 of them are not with Omni anymore, but 5 of them are. One's a vice president, 2 are a vice president, sorry. One of them was my boss until recently, that were my hotel manager at Mocara for 2 years. And so I got to have a part in them reaching their goal of becoming a general manager themselves. That's my legacy. That's what I'm most proud of. That's one of the things I get up in the morning to go to work for. It's fun. Yes, sir.
Hello, sir. My name is Shabam. Had a question. You did mention about mentors and talking about them. What was the biggest lessons that you learned throughout your career from your different mentors, and how did that impact your career all throughout so far?
Patience, focus, staying on target, staying on track for what you want to achieve. Again, I've had some Joe Palmieri, Mike Hirsch, people that taught me that you don't have to be, this is from the book too, that they taught me, You don't have to be disagreeable to disagree about something. It's all about teaching people and training people and holding them to a standard, keeping them accountable. And most people will appreciate that. And those guys did that with me. So I think, yeah, I think it's just, I don't have a better answer than that.
One last question.
Sure.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. I just have a very brief questions. You talk a lot about being a servant leader, and that is how you being impact for so many people out there within your career. But also, you also be a husband and a father, and you've been moving around a lot as well. And so I want to ask, what is your advice on like communication wise when it comes to like communicate to your partner, to your family member about, hey, we're about to move to a different city. You're gonna abandon your friend.
She's sitting right here.
So, but of course, you're the one that have to communicate and deliver the message. So,
Yeah. So we're at the Capitol Hilton in Washington, D.C., and we're celebrating our first anniversary. And we're going to go to New York. We're going to go to the Waldorf Astoria. You okay if I tell it? We go to New York, we go to the Waldorf, we walk around, we have dinner at Tavern on the Green. It's magical. But New York's got some seedy, it's a little bit tough in places. And this is way back when Times Square was not the Disney version of Times Square that you guys see today. It was a little rough. And I think we drove, this is my memory, and we're coming out of the Lincoln Tunnel, and she says, never. And I said, don't worry, I will never move you here. 1 year later, I came home and I said, honey, you're never going to believe what happened. But it was such a great career opportunity, I couldn't turn it down. I think then when we moved to Dallas, I'm pretty sure she was working and I called her at work and said, honey, can we meet for lunch? And she was, at the time she was teaching. And I said, we're moving to Dallas. Don't do it that way. It didn't work well. No, you have to have, I'm super blessed. I am so blessed that she let me pursue what I wanted to pursue. It would have never happened without her. And our kids wouldn't be the people they are without her. So I owe you everything.
What a way to end, right? Won't you join me in giving Rusty a huge applause once again for a fabulous talk today.
Thank you.
Over the years, we get to meet each other as members of Eric's Club, but we don't always get to know each other and our histories. And as each one comes up and shares their stories, we find commonalities. I know he talked about Robert and Bob being colleagues. I also work for Mr. Palmieri, and Jacques, who's in the room, I think he was your predecessor, correct, at the Hilton Americas. So what to say to the students in this audience, once you graduate from the Hilton College and you become a part of this industry, you're always connected in one way or the other. Just listen to the stories. And what an incredible story you've shared with us today. Thank you, Rusty.
Thank you.
I'd like to also let you know in the audience, we did our pictures earlier because we're going to be moving to another portion of the program in just a moment. But each one of our Eric's Club members, once they have done this step in the process to become a distinguished lecturer, which is another level of membership within Eric's Club, they each receive this chair, and it goes to their home. And after they've spoken to us, or their office, wherever they would like it to be. So we wanted you to aspire to the chair. Those who haven't spoken already, as well as the students that are in this audience, because 20 years after graduation, we'll be looking at you and hoping that you will join our ranks. This has been a wonderful 45th lecture series. Thank you all again for joining us. I want to also remind you that we have a powerful session following that one of your fellow student coups, Gina, is going to moderate our EC Insights. It's a short panel discussion where we're going to hear about global business, which I know all of you will be eager to learn about. And then following that session, which will start here in about 10 minutes, then we will be available. All Eric's Club members will be outside and available for you to talk to one-on-one. If you are based upon what you're interested in. If you are interested in events, I'll be out there. There'll be others that work in events. If you're interested in hotel and lodging, you'll be able to talk to Rusty and Robert and Bob. All of us are going to be out there open and available to you because that is one of the most important roles that we play. We're not just here, as Rusty said, because we're important. We're not. What is important is you are important to us, and that's why we're here. So we look forward to continuing our day with you today. And though we may not have brought home the championship, we are champions. And so go Cougs. We'll see you back inside in 10 minutes.
Check one, two. There.
I can be hard. Yeah. I love Lindsay. I've been like people. Yeah. I know I'm like none of y'all know who I am. Literally. I'm hungry. We have to do that. My head hurts. Okay, so I'm sitting here. Yeah. I'm gonna take my walk away.
Does it matter where we sit? This? Oh, this is my seat? Okay. No curveball.
Okay. Nothing too crazy. I actually have a whole new list of questions for you.
All right.
So I'm gonna introduce you.
Yeah.
You are. So is the
Lifetime brand.
because I was Googling, I'm trying to. So your Mikasa is part of Lifetime.
Yeah. So Mikasa is the largest dinnerware brand in the United States. And 5 years ago, they started a food service division. It literally launched 3 months before COVID.
Well,
They made a lot of mistakes because they didn't really know food service. There's a big difference in the product. And so about 3 years ago, it was actually, they called me the day I gave my lecture. Literally, I was checking my voicemail. That's the day they called me and said, hey, we need you to come head up this new division. And so we're still in our infancy. In fact, the bulk of our portfolio is really only been together for about a year. Because when I got there, I had to scrap almost the entire product. So,
but that's the fun time, to be honest, right?
you know, I somehow keep gravitating to either new launches or recognition projects. I mean, I help bring electronics to the United States as a brand. And my last company, Voucher, was just a disaster. It was just a sinking company.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can go ahead and take your seats, we're going to get started with the EC Insights panel. Please take your seats. We don't want to lose a minute of this exciting conversation.
But I want to make it. I want to be able to make this. I want to be able to make an impact. I want my work to be visible.
Don't worry, you can check out everything. Well, tomorrow, I'm with, oh, you mean here?
Yeah, I'm on that other, I'm in that other group
We're
too.
calling it our HRO lunch.
Yeah, I'm in that group too.
Okay.
So I'll
Yes,
see you
I'll
tomorrow
see
at
you.
lunch. Okay. Who are these guys?
Genevieve.
Awesome. Good to meet you. Awesome. Good to meet you. Awesome. Awesome. I've got a few babies. They also call me mama because I have 100 dentists. And I have one that you may be familiar with that works for Hilton for Caitlin, or Callie Smith. You look for her. She's the top leader at Hilton. She's based in Denver.
Is this on?
In sales.
Hello?
Over the years, I've had, since 1998, 100 from this college. And there are quite a few of us.
That's awesome. It's just so nice hearing your story. I wish you could. Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll take your seats, we're going to begin the second installment of EC Insights. EC Insights is the brainchild of Eric's Club Engagement Committee, which is chaired by Lily Ng Corrett. And the purpose of EC Insights, and we also have folks that are joining us online, the purpose of EC Insights is a short panel discussion where more of our members and a faculty member as well as a student are involved to talk about current issues and trends that are important to the students. The students select the topic, and a student moderator moderates the discussion with the professionals and faculty member. I'm going to introduce the moderator for today's session, and then she will introduce the panelists, and then proceed. As I mentioned earlier, immediately following the panel discussion, we'll all gather in the front and be available for students based upon your career interests to be able to answer questions one-on-one. I am privileged to introduce Gina Grinyo, who is class of 2025. She's getting excited about graduating this fall. And as we visited today, I learned a little bit about her personally as well. I understand that she's a PK. For those of us who know anything about ministry, she's a preacher's kid. We were laughing because I'm a preacher's mom. But Gina is a phenomenal woman. She's already been making her impact here at the Hilton College. She's the current undergraduate student and Tier 1 scholar at the University of Houston's Conrad Hilton College of Global Hospitality Leadership, pursuing a Bachelor of Science degree. She also leads the student council for the Dean's Undergraduate Council here at the college, which has a lot of roles in being ambassadors for our incredible program. She's worked at the St. Regis in Houston, at Kalahari Resorts and Conventions in Wisconsin Dells, and at the Hotel Hershey, where one of our members, Bill Hendricks, serves as the general manager. You can read more about her exciting life in her bio in the program, but let me please introduce to you and welcome Gina Grinyo, our moderator for today.
Thank you guys so much. I'm very excited to be here today. I hope you all enjoyed that lecture as much as I did. I actually had the opportunity to tour the Omni La Mansione with one of our associations here, and I loved it. So I'm just going to briefly introduce each one of our panelists. Like we said, our topic this semester is global business. So what is doing global business? We are surrounded by companies that have locations, suppliers, and employees around the world. Your favorite hotel brands here in the United States have locations on the other side of the globe. The websites you see can be accessed in multiple languages, and they can process payments in various currencies in a second. The world is interconnected. However, there are key differences between the ways businesses run here and abroad. In this panel, we're going to be delving into the challenges global businesses encounter when expanding operations overseas. Then we're going to talk about how different countries do hospitality. And then we're going to end off with how you, as a student, can prepare to work and interact in a global setting. I'm going to start here on the end with Miss Lily. Lily is well-versed in global business with a career spanning across the U.S. and Asia, where she has worked on over $30 billion of hospitality and commercial real estate projects. She is the expert on the Asian hospitality market, which you'll hear more about during this panel. She has traveled to more than 100 cities and worked on some of the most iconic projects and global brand entry strategies. She's held the positions of president of Caesars Entertainment's non-gaming division in Asia, deputy CEO at Sunny World Group, and executive VP at Jones Lang LaSalle in China. She is fluent in Cantonese, Mandarin, and English. She holds a Master's of Science from MIT and then a Bachelor of Science from Hilton College. She was honored with the prestigious recognition of top 10 female leaders by the World Hotel Association in China, and she lectured for us in spring of 2018. A warm welcome, please, for Lily. Then, to Lily's right, we have Jeff Heaney. Jeff Heaney is the current president of Mikasa Hospitality, a quality dinnerware company. As president, he helped launch a new division of Lifetime Brands, developing the sales and internal team, representative network, and portfolio of international manufacturers serving the hospitality industry. Jeff was also the president of Bauscher Hub Inc., and he worked in national account roles with Panasonic Food Service, Edlin Company, and Electrolux Professional. The early foundation of his career was started at Edward Don and Company as a sales representative. He's a two-time winner of Ed Don Sales Representative of the Year and the Bell Ringer Award for Superior Sales Performance. He's also a recipient of the Certified Food Service Professional title. He serves on the advisory board of directors for the Hilton College and is a board member for Eric's Club. And he lectured for us in the spring of 2022. A warm welcome for Jeff, please. And then finally, many of you know her already, Dr. Abbott. I want to introduce you to one of the Hilton College's best professors. She's the first to hold the endowed professorship created by the Specs Charitable Foundation, and she's the only professor in the world who holds both the CMP designation and LLM in international law and economics. She's an adjunct professor at UH Law Center, and she's published more than 50 peer-reviewed journal articles, co-authored 2 textbooks, and is the founding editor of the Journal of Convention and Event Tourism. She has received, get ready, okay, Bachelor's of Arts in Business Administration from Austin College, Master's of Hospitality from the University of Houston, MBA in Strategy from the University of Chicago, Master of Science in Analytics from Texas A&M, Juris Doctor in LLM in International Finance and Economic Law, and a PhD in Management from the University of Houston. And you guys think that 4 years is a long time to be in school. All right, a warm welcome for Dr. Abbott. All right, so throughout this panel, we have 3 sections. At the end of each section, I'll be asking for some student questions just to keep you guys engaged and listening here. So our first section is all about the challenges of operating a business abroad, and I'm going to start with Dr. Abbott today. Having a background in international finance and economic law, can you give us some examples of differences in how businesses operate here in the United States versus other countries, and what are some major financial and economic barriers to running a global business?
Have the challenge of actually making it go on. Yes, there. Is it on? Perfect. See, I can't even get past getting that microphone on. Lots of degrees, no practical sense. I think some of the biggest barriers or some of the major differences and difficulty with doing businesses abroad is that the U.S. has a fairly transparent regulatory system. So we actually have laws written down most of the time. And it's also, we have very strong intellectual property rights here and legislation for that. And we also have a system of litigation. So everyone is entitled to due process, right? So one day in court when you have some sort of a dispute. What a challenge is of doing business abroad is that most countries, depending on what region you are, don't have nearly the regulatory, all right, transparency. Let me put it that way. Transparency in your regulatory system is where you can go and see it, right? They have much more opaque regulatory systems, many built on relationships as opposed to court systems, right? So it's very difficult for individuals to be able to get to a court system. And so that makes people a little bit shy of wanting to enter into, joint ventures or to do work, or they have to figure out other ways. And since a good example would be in Asia, they really work more on relationships in the business transaction standpoint, right? So it's more relationship building. Here we might have relationships, but if our relationships fall apart, we move to lawyers who take care of that for us. That's not the same system in other countries. And then you have countries like the EU that are actually much more restrictive, and a good example is with data privacy and where data can be located, which has to be local. So there's a lot of those kinds of differences that are workable, but you definitely need to be aware of them before you decide to go into an international setting.
Thank you, Dr. Abbott. That's very interesting. We're going to move to Jeff now and take a different approach talking about manufacturing products around the globe. So Mikasa Hospitality products are manufactured around the globe. What challenges have you encountered when working with different countries? And then what kind of influences your decisions to move your manufacturing abroad?
I might attack the second question first because the first one's really timely and we could spend all day talking about that. But some of the thoughts, what goes into the thought process of where we source from, a lot of factories are located around the world specifically because where historical, maybe the natural resources were, and then because of that, the talents were developed in those regions. And so there are definitely products that are made in parts of the world because of historical reasons. And so that's part of the equation. Parts of the world, we have to work through agents instead of having direct relationships. And maybe a lot of the product is off the shelf. And so the problem with that is your competitors also have access to the same products, and you have to determine how do I go to market with this type of product. It essentially becomes more of if you control distribution or if you want it to simply be a well-priced product, that's the path you might go. Other parts of the world, you can have more design input, specific development, and maybe have more of a direct relationship with the actual factories. And I'm not criticizing the agent model because they do perform a service. And anytime you're paying for something, if you try to cut something out, a new cost does arrive. A lot of times customers think if they buy it direct, it's going to be less expensive. That's not always the case. And in fact, if you buy it direct, who you're buying it from has to invest more in other expenses, and oftentimes the costs aren't that significantly different. So a lot of it is simply where's the skill set. Some countries, maybe for those that don't know, we manufacture China glass and flatware for the professional market. There are certain countries that excel in ceramic production, but they don't do metal production, and vice versa. So there's many different variables. I personally prefer having more of a direct relationship with the people I source with. And it's proving very valuable right now with all the challenges we are having with tariffs, because we can cooperatively say, how are we going to overcome this? How are we going to get through this? How can we use it actually to our advantage at times? Anytime there's a challenge, there's always an opportunity, right? Whereas when you work through agents, you don't necessarily have that direct relationship. It's more of a transactional relationship. It's really much more short-sighted, whereas they're more concerned about that specific order versus not worrying about 5-10 years down the line, how that relationship is going to be.
Thank you. And then I just want to ask broadly, just down the line quickly, when do you kind of know when to move your business abroad, or what are some kind of key indicators of when it might be a good opportunity to move things abroad?
Well, when I arrived at my current position, we were predominantly produced in Asia, and we were looking to differentiate. And so, quite honestly, a lot of our product was me too. And I didn't feel that we were bringing any value to the marketplace just having copies of other people's product. So the decision was to go do more value-added business. And so we would take it to factories, develop our own designs, and we only introduce product where we think we're bringing something of value to the customer. There are entire categories, and I'll give you an example like melamine. Melamine makes up 40% of the dinnerware used in the United States, and we have turned down every opportunity to work in that material simply because we don't see that we're bringing anything of value to the customer. We would simply be bringing a Me Too product, probably at a similar price point, really no benefit. So that's sort of what drives our decision is, can we bring value into a category?
Lily and Dr. Abbott, do you have any input of kind of indicators, it could be economic, or just when do you know that it's good to move abroad?
Maybe I'll address on that. I think, first of all, it depends on that company's strategy. I mean, earlier today, you cannot see a much larger diversification between a Hilton brand, which is a global international brand, versus Omni, which is more, a very US-based brand. And both brands are doing fine, right? They have their own market capture, they deliver the service, they have their own DNA as a brand. So I think for brands to decide when to go abroad, Sometimes it is by coincidence. It is absolutely by opportunity. Maybe there is a partner who is overseas who want to bring you overseas. That would be a way to look at if this is time for me to go overseas. Maybe it is sometimes it is an expansion strategy that, hey, because of our brand, because of what we speak for, and because where our customers are, that we want to also go overseas. So I don't think that there is, it is not a one formula fits all. But I will caution very heavily that before any company or any brand that goes overseas is to really think through, is this going to, what the cost side of it, because it is extremely expensive to have a team overseas to work with your team, domestically. If you're going to export your domestic talent, that also is costly. Costly to your business domestically, because suddenly, your salesperson is not here, it needs to be overseas, your regional, it needs to be having a much bigger territory. So there are a lot of consequences, a lot of decisions that you really need to think through before you decide on that.
I'll echo what both of them said, and just kind of reiterate with the financial resources to make sure that you can stay there for some time, because it usually takes longer to establish a presence than you ever think. So.
Let me add to that. I'm sorry. So one of the companies that I used to work for many, many years ago is an assisted living. And actually, you guys may be familiar with it, it's the Belmont Village. And I know the CEO very well. And she was invited to expand her brand overseas to Asia. And after very, very, very long, discussion and looking at the market, and she has very strong partners, they decided they're not going to do it. And so the question is, why not? One of the reasons that she told me is that, Lily, what I'm concerned about is the intellectual property that Dr. Abbott was just talking about. Is on one hand, it is a fantastic opportunity. You're going to make so much money. But at the same time, once your IP, once your, the knowledge of the brand and how things are done is exported out, the control of that is very difficult. So then again, then it becomes a decision, which is more important. And like Dr. Abbott said, sometimes when your IP is out and there's not a lot of protection, there are, but they're not. And when you have copies, when you have people taking, your management manuals and doing it on their own, those are very, very difficult to protect when you're outside of the boundaries of here.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next section about differences in hospitality between countries, I want to ask, does the audience have any questions about moving your business abroad? Any specific questions based on what we've heard so far? Up front here.
Is it on? Oh, there we go. What kind of legal constraints exist in the global market that would either deter or maybe it poses as an advantage for starting a business globally in another market and then maybe returning to the US? Is it favorable? Because I know, especially with companies like, Caesars, you can see a significant global presence, but, sometimes it may not be favorable to start a business here in the US. What are your takes on that? What is your perspective to that?
Well, I think you need a whole class to talk about that. It's really not that simple. And also, I also want to caution everybody that when you say overseas, there are many, many parts outside of the United States. So every country, every region is so different. I think a lot of times decisions are made depending on depending on financials, right? So and I refer to when I was at Caesars, one of the reasons why they wanted to take a non-gaming brand is because they want to expand, have access to the customers, so that they can also come back to the US. So there's a very different strategy. So that really depends on, what the company, what they value and what is important to them at that point. from a legality standpoint, again, it is so wide. I'm not even going to go there. But sometimes it's about, can you repatriate money, right? You know, sometimes if you're earning foreign currencies, not every country allow you to repatriate money back in the U.S. or convert it back into U.S. dollars, or how the conversion rate is going to be. Are those factors going to be deterrent for you to expand overseas? So, you know, suddenly if you earn a whole bunch of, I don't know, dong or whatever money that the local currency, you're stuck. You know, you can't get it back, then what are you going to do? You know, so there's so many of these questions that you really need to consider before you go.
And if you're thinking about, I wasn't sure if I understood your question. Are you thinking about starting abroad first? Yeah, sometimes there's legal constraints on that, just in terms of whether or not you have to have a joint venture. So you would have to partner with somebody. You would not be able to do it on your own. And that, if you don't already have a partner, it's, you know, you better, better know your partner really, really well, because you're probably going to be stuck with them a lot longer than you are anyone you're married to. All right. So, I mean, it is hard to get out of those types of situations, and you can't go into certain countries without having a joint venture.
All right. Thank you so much for your question. We're going to move on to the next section. We'll have time for more at the end. So we're going to talk about how different countries approach hospitality, or some of the norms that different countries have that we might not see here. So I'm going to start with Lily. How would you describe the hospitality approach in Asian countries versus the United States?
I think I'll use one word, which is, it's actually very difficult. I think in Asia, there are certain, I don't want to use the word class, it's not class, it's different levels. When you are in, let's say, you know, the luxury level, there's so much refinement in the way that service delivered, in the way that the employees approach service, and in terms of the customer demanding the level of service when you're the luxury level, that in the US, just as a comparison, I'm not seeing that unless you're like at the Carlisle in New York City or something like that. There's really such a level of refinement. You know, I can tell you some of the best hotels I've stayed at, they're in India, and the level of service is impeccable. You know, your tea service is literally white glove. The waiter will always make sure serve from your left, clear from the right. In here, it's very difficult to find. So I think that will be a very starking difference in terms of the hospitality approach.
Definitely. And I want to ask Dr. Abbott too. You've spent some time in Lima. I want to ask you about your experience there and kind of things you've noticed when you live there.
Because that's an interesting one. I mean, I love Lima. I will probably wind up retiring in Lima. So, because I just think it's such a beautiful country, our city. But the people there are also very friendly, so very similar to here. They're also very customer service oriented, but they don't have the level of technology. So there's a lot of issues where they may want to be more proactive or use more personalization, but they don't, they simply lack the technology, the internet, the infrastructure to do some of those things. As where I look at, like, you know, kind of looking at the Asian market or Japan, where they're much more, they anticipate every need the guest has before the guest ever shows up, because they're, you know, they have a very open data, collective data sharing. So they know, you know, they've already figured out exactly, if you've had previous days there, they know exactly what you want, and they've just done it seamlessly. It's part of, they feel like it's their value. I feel like Lima doesn't have the same personalization because they don't have the infrastructure, right? But to do that, but they do have they have a value in the service that they're delivering. So they don't deliver service for a tip, because they don't tip. They deliver service because it's part of their cultural value of service. I think that's a big difference between the US and many other countries, is that why they're performing, you know, their service.
And kind of based off those two examples, are there any hospitality norms that you've seen, read about from another country that you think are more effective or could be effective if we implemented them here? Start with Lily.
One thing I have to say, in Asia, one of the biggest driver for service delivery is population. And what I mean by that is the ratio of staff versus everything. So like in Asia, let's take an example. China has 1.3 billion people, and India has another one, also 1.3 billion. So they have a lot of people they need to hire, employ. So you can afford to have, 3 doormen and 20 bus people and a restaurant where you can't afford here. So that level of so that creates two issues. One is that you have more human beings to manage, and everybody may interpret things a little differently. So your training program needs to be a lot more rigid, and and all of that. But at the same time, you have a lot more people who can pay attention to the service that need to be delivered. I'm not sure I'm answering the question, but essentially, I think there is one key element to me that I think that I felt the difference in Asia versus in here is you have more labor that can, take care of the service.
And then Jeff, I was going to ask you too. You've traveled quite a bit, and then you've interacted with international markets. Are there any ways that they do things that you think would be effective here?
Well, I was gonna state some differences that or what maybe causes some of these differences, but in many countries that I've traveled through, a lot of people are professional waiters, or they're not necessarily striving to become the GM of the hotel. They're very dedicated to their work. And so it's a different maybe mindset that they're there not just to get through college or to, a stage in life. It's they're in the hospitality industry as a career. And there's also more family-owned businesses versus chain or big massive organizations. And when you have family-run hotels, it definitely has a different feel than a large corporate hotel. So there's nuanced things like that that are much different. I didn't answer your question. I apologize, but
That's all right.
as my experience. But I mean, what I see is, there's been many countries I go to. I think one of the greatest countries in the world as far as hospitality is when I go to Turkey. It's incredible the warmth that you receive when you go to Turkey. And last week I was in Mexico. It's just a genuine warmth of the people that comes through their hospitality. It's fantastic.
All right. And now I want to ask the audience if you have any questions. You have 3 people up here that have been all over the place. So looks like Michael has a question.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you all for being here. My name is Michael Croft. I'm a student here and also one of the student advisors along with Gina. My question is, what role does corporate social responsibility, or CSR, play when expanding into different markets, international markets with different cultures?
I mean, that's a big one. It's a responsibility as a company to make sure you're doing the right thing. And it's absolutely necessary for your long-term health. We have 180 employees throughout Asia, and their job is to make sure that the factories we work with are doing all the right things. We have to make sure there's no forced labor. We have to make sure there's exits for people and, the proper fire extinguishing equipment, all these type of things. And where we don't have those people, we have to hire third-party companies to do that. I hope we do it for the right reasons. It's the right thing to do, but there's also, financial pressure to do the right things, especially if you're a public company. So, but I'm going to give us the benefit of the doubt, say we're doing it for the right reasons.
my later role when the company I work for actually developed properties, we're actually seeing a lot of the engineering companies, the planners, the architects overseas have the environmental, being very environmentally conscious. A lot of the developers overseas actually will go for the LEED certification, or since they have an opportunity to build something from ground up in today's technology, implement a lot more of the energy savings, using the proper materials, thinking a little bit on the longer term on the sustainability level than some of the projects I've seen here. So I think you may be surprised to see that actually overseas, a lot of the projects do have sustainability embedded in it. They may not have the big name, called DEI or sustainability, but they don't do it because of a label. They do it because we want to be friendlier to the environment and also be at a cutting edge on the next wave. That's what I've seen overseas.
And there's also lots of regulation around it in Europe, especially, as where here we don't, it's more voluntary. All right. So they ISO 9000, there's all kinds of standards that you have to meet. So yeah, a lot of times they're doing it for the right reasons, but they're also doing it for compliance. So.
Perfect. And now we're going to move on to our last section. So it's all about you in this section. How can students prepare to work abroad? And I'm going to start again with Dr. Abbott. How has diversifying your education portfolio helped you in your career?
Ooh, I'm always in school. So I think that it's given me a really broad perspective throughout my career. It's allowed me to move in different directions and become more adaptable. Having the legal background lets me anticipate regulatory issues or intellectual property issues that then I'm able to identify prior to them becoming a problem. So, anticipating what the issue might be and then being able to come up with a solution prior to. Then moving, kind of into the hospitality area and, knowing what exceptional services and doing that, whether it's in the hotel or restaurant setting, or in your classroom setting, in your life setting, to be much more of a service-oriented person. And then, more recently, I've moved into analytics and artificial intelligence, which has given me a much more broader perspective of what's going on in the world. And a lot of the issues that we're seeing cross-border is data protection and data storage, all right, and data governance. And so and the data is the backbone of AI, so it all kind of connects. So I like having that interdisciplinary approach to look at a single problem. I can look at it from many, many different angles and be able to address those. But more importantly for me is that I can bring those back to my all these different diverse perspectives, disciplinary wise, to my students. So they have a broader outlook when they go into business. They're not just thinking, from a very narrow legal, and we all know what legal departments say. No, that's just the answer. It's easy. No, everything. But they look at things from multiple perspectives of, wait, how can we solve this problem, right? And so I think that that's a good tool to give our students for going out into the international market.
Perfect. And then I'm going to move over to Lily. How important was fluency in another language for your career abroad? You're fluent in 2 other languages other than English. And what skills would you recommend for students looking for opportunities outside of the United States?
Language is very important. First of all, I would tell you that if you want to work overseas, the age of the expat, the very padded expat packages and all of that is gone. If you don't know the country that you're going into, and if you don't know the language of the country you're going into, it's very, 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 very difficult. I'll give you a perfect example. When I was Zhongshan LaSalle, my boss is German, and he does not speak a word of Mandarin. And there's always a secretary following him. On one hand, it's fine, you're functional, but then at the end of the day, you don't really get the jigs of what is happening. And I will also tell you that when I worked for Jones Lang, my very first mandate was I have to speak Mandarin. In less than a year, it was in my performance review. So I was taking classes, every morning. I don't speak Mandarin. I mean, that's not my mother tongue. So it's very, very, very important that you need to have the language. It's not just about language, it's also really you need to dig down into the culture. My best language lessons is actually with the taxi driver. He would tell me so many things. It's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'll figure it out eventually. So it's very important. So if you are thinking about a career overseas, you definitely need to dig down into the culture because you're not just going to be working, you're going to be living. And the only way you understand what people are talking about and what is, the hot topic is you have to be able to converse and understanding the local culture.
Definitely an important skill to have. And then, Jeff, I want to ask you just generally, what skills and abilities do you think are important for aspiring hospitality leaders today? And then what were some of the most important skills for you in sales?
I would say the thing I would promote and what I try to coach my team is thoughtfulness. And I think so many people are consumed with getting work done rather than doing effective work. And I see it oftentimes somebody sends a careless email and it creates 40 more emails and a lot of frustration and a lack of results. And if the thoughtfulness was put into that first email, you could really accomplish a lot more. So I'm constantly trying to coach people, and this is not just for new people into the workforce. I'm shocked when I see people very senior that are not really productive because they're not putting thoughtfulness in their work. So there's been major points in my career that I've seen spikes because maybe I got off track and was more concerned about answering all my emails and rather than really doing the important productive work. But when you go to meetings, when you're part of group sessions, bring something to the table, put good thought into what you're doing. Don't just shake your head yes. I've had many times where I was the contra to the discussion, but I, in many cases, bring value to this discussion because I'm going to bring a different perspective, right? And you don't always have to be right. But I think there's a lot more value when you think, you bring good ideas to the dialogue. And so, the one thing I can say in my current place, I've been there 3 years, I report up to the CEO. He's never told me no. And I make sure that I never give him a chance to tell me no, because I make sure anytime I present to him, I have all the information and I have all the answers. So anytime you ask a question, have the answer, right? Don't ask, what do I do? Suggest an idea. It may not be a great idea, but at least suggest something that you can at least have a dialogue rather than, what do I do?
Thank you so much. And we're going to go into our final question that I have for our panel, and then I'll take one or two last ones from you guys. So I'm going to ask, how did Hilton College prepare you for international hospitality? But conversely, what skills or abilities did you have to learn through industry experience instead? So I want to start with Dr. Abbott.
I guess well, how did the hotel school prepare me? I'm going to have to defer to my sister, Agnes DeFranco, who took me all over the world, her and Dr. Chan, in the first couple of years that I was here. And so that was kind of eye-opening to go to, I don't know how many trips we did to Asia, but to see different ways that people do business and then conducting business, because we had lots of partnerships abroad. So that was kind of my foray into international. And I had great mentors in Dr. Chan and Dr. DeFranco. So and those were lots of fun. And that's the second part of the question.
Yeah, it's kind of what skills or abilities did you have to learn actually working versus in the classroom?
Oh, for through experience, I guess that was through experience. Was it's much different when you read about etiquette and foreign etiquette, and when you actually get there and you see how people do things that are different. So getting those cultural nuances, I think, is really important. And it's interesting that if you go somewhere like the UK where they speak the same language, or a country that speaks the same languages, it's actually harder because you don't see the difference in the nuances. And there are lots of nuances that you have to be aware of because it's easy to get tripped up. So sometimes the further you are from the country, the easier it is. And you wouldn't think that intuitively, right? You think, oh, we speak the same language, we're all good. But it's not quite that way. So it was something I learned on the road.
Jeff, any thoughts about, the balance between learning in the classroom versus experience?
I think it's one of the greatest values that the University of Houston brings is the fact that we can tie great education and great experience. And the value it brought to me was simply exposing me to a lot of things I'd never been exposed to before in my life. I mean, I grew up basically as part of a military family. You're somewhat actually isolated from the real world when you're in that environment. So coming here, I saw a lot of things I'd never been exposed to before. And working, Lily and I were in PAR-X together. What a great experience that was, going into all these different environments every week was a different experience. And so for me, it really was, it really was a great time in my life to open my eyes. The diversity in the city, the diversity in the school really was fantastic too. It really changes or broadens your world a lot. So.
And then Lily, finally.
I'll agree with both of you, what you just mentioned, but I'll add to a couple of things. Number one is, I don't think you realize how international UVH really is. And even within this microorganism of the hotel school, if you look around, just look at how many languages are spoken, how many people that look very different than you, that in itself is a lot of learning in there. And the second part is I personally think not everybody will have an opportunity to work overseas, but there is a much bigger conversation that's happening right now is a lot of the overseas trends coming into the United States. I'll cite two examples. One is, do you know what is the most viewed miniseries on Netflix? Squid Game, which is a Korean drama. And what is the most Google cuisine right now? Korean. So not that I'm advocating for Korea, but but first of all, there is a reason why so much Korean culture is in this country. It's a very cultivated planning by the country many years ago as an export and an opportunity to expose the world to Korean culture. So number one. Number two is that there's a lot of foreign influences that are in this country right now. So even if you don't have an opportunity or don't want to work overseas, there are a lot of overseas trends that are coming in the United States that is absolute opportunity for all of you. You might want to open the next best boba tea shop or the Korean restaurant or whatever. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the world is a lot smaller than you think. And even if you don't have an opportunity to work overseas, bring those trends here. It's a lot more melting pot and there's a lot of opportunities.
Thank you. It's great hearing from you guys what students can do and those valuable experiences that you've had in the classroom and outside. We are out of time. So if you guys have questions for these wonderful panelists, there's a meet and greet right after this outside. So I'd encourage you to ask your questions then. But thank you so much for coming to our second panel.